Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. Thanks for joining us today for the Fireside Chat and Exploration Update with Coppernico Metals. I'm Steve Therrien, mining analyst at Therrien Capital, and I'll be moderating the session today. We've got a good session lined up. I'm joined by three key members of the Coppernico team, Tim Kingsley, VP of Exploration, Keenan Jennings, Director, and Ivan Bebek, Chair and CEO. How are you guys doing today?
Thanks, Steve.
Great to be here.
Glad you guys are here, and thank you for the time. So today's focus is on Coppernico's recently completed Phase 1 drill program at the Sombrero project and its broader regional exploration strategy in southern Peru. It's a story that's evolved meaningfully over the past year, and we're excited to hear the latest insights directly from the team. Coppernico controls a large 100,000 hectare land position in a highly prospective copper skarn porphyry belt in southern Peru, much of which lies under a thin volcanic cover. The belt hosts major copper, gold, skarn, and porphyry deposits such as Las Bambas, Haquira, Constancia, and Antapampa. After years of systematic work, mapping, sampling, geophysics, community engagement, the company's narrowed its focus to several high-priority targets. Initial drilling is now returning encouraging early results. Coppernico is targeting mineralized skarn systems at Sombrero. These form when hot metal-rich fluids react with carbonate rocks like limestone or marble, often near the contact of a cooling magma body. The process forms coarse-grained minerals like garnet and pyroxene, but also metal-bearing minerals like chalcopyrite and magnetite, and sometimes gold. These prospective zones typically form immediately adjacent to the contact of the intrusion and the altered and metamorphosed carbonate rock. And when the mineralization is hosted in the carbonate rock at that contact, it's called exoskarn. When it's hosted within the intrusion, it's called an endoskarn. So to give viewers an idea of what we're talking about, we're going to briefly pull up a plan view of the Ferrobamba deposit at the Las Bambas mine to show you the geology, drilling, and sort of assay results coming from a mine that has been in the top 15 largest copper mines in the world for some time now. So you'll see the legend kind of in the top left, the lithology legend. You can see the grade of the copper assays on the left-hand side, and you can see the scale bar in the bottom right. And so what you've got going on here, you've got kind of two sedimentary packages. In the top right under the north arrow, you'll see a kind of yellow-green color. That's the Marl Formation. That's your sandstones, siltstones, shales. On top of that, you have your Ferrobamba limestone formation. You've had pre-mineral intrusions come up through those sedimentary layers, and then you've had, and those are the flat pinks and kind of the yellow-orange color, and then you've had syn mineral intrusions, the causative intrusions that fluids have kind of come up and mineralized the sedimentary rock in the stippled pink colors. You can see the green kind of surrounding that stippled green in the center of the image. That's the exoskarn. So that's kind of the highly cooked up sedimentary rock right along that contact. And that's where the highest grades of mineralization are hosted in. And if you take a look at the drilling, you can kind of see it forms, it's almost a halo around that intrusion. Like I said, that's where all the mineralization is kind of located. And if you take a look at the drill intercepts, you can kind of get an idea of the style, the length and the grades that you're getting at a deposit like this, 170 meters at 0.7, 104.7, 106.56 at 0.3. So these are the style and kind of length and grade of copper intercepts that you're looking for. You're not going to have a 1,000 meter, 1% copper equivalent hole like Philo, for example. And so if we look at it in cross section, you'll get an idea of kind of what it looks like in the second dimension. This is a cross section through that plan view. You can see, the causative intrusion in the center in the stippled pink, and you can see the drilling pattern and that the bright pink colors from the drill holes right along that contact in that green exoskarn. So this is kind of what Coppernico would be looking for, the type of drill result they'd be hoping to see, and the geometry you would kind of hope to see in plan view and also in a cross section. So hopefully that gives you kind of an idea of what Coppernico is looking for geometry-wise, geology-wise, scale-wise. Before we dive in, just a quick note on format. So I'll begin with brief introductions and backgrounds from each team member, followed by an elevator pitch on Coppernico from Ivan. Then we'll move on to interview-style questions, and finally, audience Q&A. Feel free to jump in anytime during the questions. If you want to add to the discussion, we'll try and make it as engaging as possible. And lastly, before we start the introductions, if you want to read our research coverage on Coppernico, you can sign up at 3l-capital.com. You can also visit Coppernico's website at coppernicometals.com for more in-depth information and technical materials. There's a lot of really good information on the website. Let's get this started with introductions. Tim, we'll start with you, then to Keenan, and finally, Ivan. Just give us a quick elevator pitch on Coppernico.
Glad to be here, and it'll be a fun discussion, I'm sure. I'm a structural geologist by training. I've been Spent a lot of time working on skarn systems in Peru with a company called Trevally, looking for zinc, lead, and silver deposit. I've also done quite a bit of exploration for VMS-style mineralization in Canada, as well as gold in Alaska and in the Yukon. I've been an exploration geologist my entire career, over 20 years working in the industry, and really excited to be part of this team. It's been really fun so far, and we're on to something that has a lot of potential, that has the whole team very excited about working on it.
It's a real privilege to join this fireside chat today. My name's Keenan Jennings. I am a geologist also by background, career spanning 35 years, and pretty much every continent on the planet, including 20 years in South America, and a number of those years in Peru itself. My expertise spans from greenfields exploration right through to operating mine environments. I've worked with a number of majors and juniors across the course of my career, and my last post before I elected to step away from my professional career was as the VP for metals exploration for BHP. That was at the end of 2023. In the interim, I've now joined Coppernico, and I provide strategic advisory to other sectors, high-tech sectors in and around associated with the minerals industry.
Thank you, Stephen, for having us here today on the Fireside Chat. My name is Ivan Bebic. For those of you who don't know me, I've been an entrepreneur for 25 years in the mining sector. I started on the finance side, quickly learned that I wanted to be part of finding big mines around the world. I've had a chance to be very lucky and find a few opportunities that we monetize extremely well for shareholders. Found a 5 million ounce gold mine in Ghana, West Africa. That mine is now producing about 250,000 ounces a year, and then drilled 100 holes in Mexico looking for the same style exploration or same opportunity, and was able to sell that company to Agnico Eagle in 2014. Those two successes instigated a lot of hunger and thirst to go do something bigger on a world-class scale, and first stepped on to Sombrero in 2015. So we've been on this project for 10 years. It's a long time, and time's the expensive part. Although we spent about $40 million getting to this fireside chat as we are today, we finally, in the last 6 to 8 months, we've got a chance to pull out a drill and start drilling to see if the dream of finding a pretty big opportunity is real. For those of you who don't know Sombrero, it's the thesis is that we're extending a world-class copper belt. Stephen has mentioned Las Bambas. That's a strong analog to a lot of what we're exploring, and several other mines on the eastern half of the belt match a lot of the targets we're seeing on the western side of the belt. The project has gone slowly until now, and we're starting to get more social access agreements done, and we're starting to advance permits so that we can expand this big targeting opportunity to go and find world-class mines in southern Peru. The project sits in an area that has been underexplored due to some previous assessments by the local government and the government of Peru, assuming that the rocks were covered by volcanics. They were too young, but erosional windows have exposed that the same rocks occur as all the mines next door. So it's an exciting point to be at. We did draw a lot of corporate attention on this project. We obviously see that with Keenan Jennings, the former VP of exploration at BHP, joining our board and also becoming an investor. That's a big statement towards the third-party interest, because Keenan was pursuing us with BHP prior to that. And for those of you who aren't familiar with BHP, that's the largest miner globally. As far as other investors that have taken notice and third-party validations that our thesis and opportunity could be really successful here, Teck bought 9.9% of the company. As Teck Resources, one of Canada's largest mining companies, in an effort to secure a position early, just in case we do start to get it right. And furthermore, Newmont is a major shareholder of the company as well. The appeal in this project is both scale and grade. Skarns and porphyries, but skarns specifically, are quite variable. They do require some patience and tenacity. I've raised nearly $800 million in my career as needed for exploration and development in companies I've been involved in, and that's going to be a key factor in helping strategically finance and advance the company forward as it needs more capital. The company currently has 12 months of working capital. It trades on the Toronto Stock Exchange and on the OTC capital markets, COPR in Toronto, CPPMF in the US. And we are at the most exciting stage of having had our first pass, which you'll hear about today, in terms of our drilling, as well as the big pipeline that's developing of additional targets. When you think of Coppernico and you hear us talk about it today, think of world-class scale, think of potential grade, which is a big issue, and I'm sure Keenan will touch on it from his BHP perspective later in this fireside chat. But think of grade and scale being the things that we're chasing, all from surface or right at surface. which is the most profitable type of mineralization you can find. The project's going to start slow, but it will go quick once we start to find the sweet spots of it. And the most important thing I want people to take away from this presentation is the scale of our targets is in the top tier of what you'd be looking for globally. Back to you, Stephen.
Thanks for the background and intro and elevator pitch, guys. So I'm going to start with Tim. I'll ask you 4 questions, maybe some more, and then we'll move on to Keenan and Ivan. So Tim, you guys drilled 20 holes in your phase 1 program, just over 8,000 meters at what's called the Ccascabamba area. Could you summarize your observations, particularly, how they've impacted or refined your exploration thesis now that you have all the results back? What have you learned about the geological factors influencing higher grade copper mineralization at Sombrero and specifically Ccascabamba?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So we just completed our kind of inaugural first phase of drilling on this really large target area. And we're working in an area with a lot of post-mineral cover. It's not very thick, but it's enough that the geology isn't explicitly obvious right on surface. And so we were trying to answer some very specific questions with our drill holes. We did widely spaced drilling over this very large area. And one of the key things we're looking for, as you mentioned, is that contact zone between your intrusions and your limestones, and understanding what that looks like in the third dimension and if we can trace it horizontally. And we were really successful in doing that. Where we tested it the most was in our Ojota target area. That's sort of a prospect within this larger Ccascabamba system. But what we're seeing is skarn alteration over really significant widths, hundreds and hundreds of meters in the drill hole of just this garnet pyroxene skarn. The best mineralization that we've seen to date is typically occurring pretty close to the contact, although we are seeing just with the total size of this skarn alteration, we're seeing additional mineralization happening further away from the intrusion. So one of the key controls that we're seeing clearly is that intrusive contact. And this initial round of drilling, particularly at Ojota, gives us sort of an anchor point to start off of. Really, we've located that contact, we understand what that looks like some more, and we're going to continue to expand around to understand where else mineralization may have been focused. A couple other controls in the skarn system in general and specifically at our project. Clearly, the host lithology, so the type of limestone. Some limestones are more favorable to mineralization than others. In particular, very similar to Las Bambas, a lot of the other deposits within the Andahuaylas-Yauri belt, it looks like probably the most favorable right now anyways, area for mineralization would be pretty close to the contact between the Macha and the Ferrobamba limestones. And that's where we have a couple targets, including the Fierrazo target is located along that. Our new Antapampa target is located along that. But that's not also the only control. There's controls related to alteration and permeability of structure that can focus mineralization into specific parts. It's been a really enlightening program. We're very, very far ahead in our understanding compared to where we were a year ago before starting this program. The next phase of drilling is going to be really important for us. I think we're going to be able to be much focused on where we target and what we're trying to look for. Another key aspect about this program was our first chance to really get to work within the Huancasancos community, where we've been spending a lot of time, talking about what we want to do, working with the community on their own projects. But it's our first opportunity to show them how we work and give them a bit of an experience of what a new modern day exploration program looks like. And that was really amazing. We built some really good relationships. We were, using local suppliers, hiring local workforce, and doing a lot of education on and showing people what exploration actually looks like. And I think that has made a really significant difference. We had a really good time with the team down there, and I think it's showing in the surrounding communities. They're starting to understand what this looks like and what the opportunity for them could be as well. Probably the last takeaway is really like the drilling has really just solidified. Everybody on the team is more excited now than they were even before about what the potential is here. We think we've got an opportunity to make a really big discovery, and so we're really excited about that.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, I mean, from what I remember, you got issued a drill. Yeah, here we go. So there's a polygon here. That was kind of where you were able to drill. From what I remember, a lot of the targets here were undercover and kind of based on geophysics. So kind of based on what you're seeing in the copper mineralization that you've encountered, how does it align with your IP and your magnetic surveys that you've done so far, what kind of correlations or discrepancies are you seeing? And based on the data you have now, can you kind of refine your approach, or maybe do you need to do some additional geophysics? What are your thoughts on that?
Large target like this with a lot of cover, we do rely very heavily on our geophysics to try to understand geology. Either for, obviously, everybody would like direct detection of mineralization, but also just trying to understand what the geologic framework is within the system. This is a good slide because it touches on another part of the results of this drill program, which is that we've always knew this would be the case, but the system has grown much larger outside of our drill polygon, our current drill polygon. And that's part of why we're expanding that polygon now to give us a lot more freedom to explore in a lot of different areas. We do see a general correlation between elevated chargeability and sulfides and copper mineralization, particularly in the Ojota area. We see a strong correlation where that's occurring. We still have yet to fully understand what that looks like further to the north in the Chumpe area, where we're limited a bit by our permit boundary. So chargeability is going to be a key geophysical signature that we'll continue to try to test and understand. In the magnetic data that we're looking at here, at least on the southern margin around Ojota and Corrales, kind of by hole 12 or 13, we started to figure out that the magnetic data was really clearly defining a contact zone between the limestone to the south, where there's low magnetic response, and the intrusive complex to the north, where it's a lot more magnetic. And that is not a really sharp boundary by any means, even though it looks a little bit sharp here, but that's giving us a guide for where else we might want to drill and cross if we want to test that contact. You can see we've really gotten to test it quite well in Ojota, at least in some initial stages, but there's still a lot of contact zone outside of our current permit and within the permit that we still need to test and expand upon. As far as doing additional geophysical work, we're evaluating some of that right now. We're kind of reinterpreting and trying to add a little bit more layer of structure and look at this system from a larger perspective, including NEOC, which is another one of our priority targets. And we'll, based on that work and kind of final synthesis of our drill results, we'll see if we want to recommend any additional work there.
Great. Yeah. Just looking at Chumpy, it looks like you I don't think you did. You didn't cross that contact, and
That's right.
So you need a larger permitted area to really test that contact. So
yeah,
really, really interesting when that time comes.
Yeah, absolutely. And that contact zone there's a wedge of limestone sort of sitting in between the Ccascabamba intrusive complex and then the NEOC intrusive complex to the north. So there's a lot of opportunity to cook some rock and put a lot of fluids in that system.
And so just kind of moving on and talking more about that expanded drill permit, I think one area that's going to be potentially included in that is called Fierrazo. It's a very interesting target. So could you give us some background on that target, maybe some of the historical drilling and trenching results of the past, and what kind of potential do you see there?
That's a great target for us to talk about some more. There's magnetite scarred mineralization right on surface in this sort of north-south trending body. Aceros out of Arequipa, an iron mining company, did a little bit of work on it, including 8 drill holes, exploring for iron principally. Coppernico was able to get a hold of that drill core, relog it, and resample it. What you're seeing in those initial results, every single hole hit the magnetite body, hit great mineralization. We're seeing 50 to 100 meter intervals at 0.5% copper and 0.1 to 0.2 grams gold. That's really significant and very comparable to lots of other mines elsewhere within the belt. For us to get to include that into our next phase of drilling is just it's an obvious target to go drill. It's something we've been wanting to drill for a while. It'll give us a lot of understanding of the controls on mineralization locally in detail, but also put the scale of this mineralization into a little bit better perspective. Similarly, on surface, there's trenching that's really high grade as well, over at least a 200-300 meter strike length of this system. And what you can see in this cross section in blue are sort of the initial phase of plant holes to continue to test that mineralized body.
Just a comment from my end, Stephen, and we get this question a lot. Why wouldn't you drill here first? There was some iron exploring here that was done previously. They did not sample for copper when they saw copper visually in the holes, as you can see in those two images from both the oxide and the sulfide portion. It was a deterrent because it does affect the metallurgy of extracting iron ore. And so this was an area that had some historical operations that changed the permitting dynamic a little bit. And because the project took nearly 9 years to bring online, and obviously we had hit COVID for 3 years, we wanted to get a permit out to drill, as soon as possible. And the targets we drilled around Ccascabamba barely scratched the surface, but they've certainly pointed us towards areas like Chumpi where we haven't hit the contact. And we learning as we go. They were all warranted holes to drill because you don't know when you're drilling through cover where to go. In terms of this area here, which is largely speculated to be drilled, or people want to see us drill it, we're in process right now, and we will have updates here in the coming weeks with how we're going to get the permit here, and hopefully in the very short order. We don't know exactly how quick it's going to happen, but anywhere from the next 2 to 6 months, there's some possibilities to get a permit here pretty quick, or it could take us a bit longer. But either way, this is a driving effect of why it was so easy, or not easy, but it was so important to hold on to this project for nearly a decade. And it does give us a lot of confidence that the subsurface potential is real and the grade is real below surface as much as we see it on surface. And as far as that trench goes, the 200 plus meters of about 0.5% copper, we're trenching some of the best areas of a different target right now in the system. And so there's a lot of robust outcrop that we're finally getting access to, and you'll see the pipeline of targets develop. We have 6 now that are grooming for drilling. This is the first of 6. And the scale of these things is quite substantial.
What's really interesting was when you look at the trenches over that target and some of the historical drilling, and you take all those intercepts that I showed earlier from the Las Bambas slide, and you plot them on a grade times width plot. They're all, Fierrazo is right in that cluster with those results. So it's gonna be really interesting when you guys follow that up.
Even on the Ojota results, the 19 meters, 0.5%, and so
Yeah.
on. So those all make the statistics of Las Bambas. And if you look back at the section, which was great that you showed earlier, you can see where the blue colors versus before it gets in the red, that's all 0.2 to 0.4. So again, it's finding the sweet spot, the contact that's going to really drive mineralization. So from our end of it, we were ecstatic about what we saw there in results, although it doesn't drive share price, not in this environment, but eventually it points us to a lot higher level of confidence, as Tim pointed out.
No, exactly. Last question, Tim. In one of your last press releases, you started to talk about, new exploration targets such as Tipicancha, Antapampa, Macha, Machay. Can you describe some of these targets, what the geology is, with the scale, kind of the data that supports them, and what you're planning to do to develop those targets this year?
Yeah, sure. That's really good. In addition to our drill program, we've been out trying to advance earlier stage exploration on our large land package because it really has not been looked at in any level of detail. And so these initial targets that are coming out right now are things that we've just sent geos out to do some initial prospecting from stream sediment results or some 1 or 2 historic rock samples, or a color anomaly on surface. And the result of that is actually proving quite fruitful. It's rare that you can find places where you can still just walk the ground, do basic geologic work, and come up with new targets. In the Antapampa, north of Nioc area, that target is similar to Ccascabamba or Nioc. It's another skarn system. We see there's not a lot of outcrop, but we see at least 2 different intrusive phases that have been altered with some endoskarn alteration. And then there's hints about strong exoskarn alteration, garnet and pyroxene exoskarn with magnetite ridges and crests and mineralization along surface. And that's occurring right near the contact between the Mara Formation and the Ferrobamba Formation, which is something we think is quite prospective throughout the entire belt, and we're excited to see this here. Not exactly sure yet how it relates to Nioc. It's 1.5 kilometers away, which is a long ways away, but the other system, Ccascabamba, is easily 3 kilometers large. Maybe this is just part of that Nioc system. It's a little early to say at this time. In line with kind of continuing to grow our pipeline, we went and took a closer look at Tipicancha, and that's a completely different kind of target here. This is much younger style of alteration or mineralization and alteration occurring in volcanic rocks that are covering our skarn mineralization elsewhere. So it'll be kind of Miocene-aged mineralization, perhaps. And what we're seeing in our alteration and geochemical data, as well as just kind of basic geologic observations on styles of alteration and presence of pyrite, is what looks like a large lithocap, part of an epithermal system. We think we see a vertical zonation as well as horizontal zonation within the system. And we think we're kind of in the lower portions of an epithermal system that would potentially be transitioning to a porphyry at depth. And so, we put out some news release about some channel sampling work that we've done in an area where we see this kind of pyrite breccia and massive pyrite ledges with really good copper mineralization right on surface. And it's just the start of what looks like a completely new system. It's up to 2 kilometers long that we've defined it by 400 or 500 meters wide. It's a serious target, something that has potential to actually make a really big difference or be a major discovery. It's rare to have a project. There's a lot of juniors that have just one of these targets. And we've got Ccascabamba, we've got Nioc and maybe Antapampa. Tipicancha is the a third or fourth one coming online. And then we're still early in the Machay exploration work, but we've clearly defined another 3 large anomalies of alteration systems that need additional work, and we're going to continue to work that up over the next couple of months. And they just represent additional serious targets that we can advance and drill and potentially make a meaningful discovery.
Oh yeah, I mean, each one of these could be a company maker. From what I remember, Macha Machay had some of the highest I think copper and stream sediment anomalies. Is that right, or was it gold? One of the two.
Had both. Really, some of the highest stream sediment copper anomalies, and then 1 or 2 catchments had some really, really anomalous gold stuff. And there's, they're all looking very, very interesting. It speaks to how little exploration has been done in this area and how much opportunity still exists. And I mean, this is why the team is so excited. Like, it's rare to get to participate in something where you have so many chances to make a major discovery.
That's a great point. And Margarita, if you could put up the slide with the overview of Ccascabamba, Tipicancha, Antapampa, you're seeing a cluster of mineralized intrusions in this area. If you look over at Las Bambas, there's 3 mineralized intrusions that make up that system. And the comment that Tim made that I want everyone to take from this chat is to see a junior or a company that has 4 or 5 or 6 of these in one land position, that is extremely rare. We would be happy with just Ccascabamba or just Nioc or just Tipicancha. And generally there'd be a staking frenzy around here. And because we were first movers on the belt, and we took 100,000 hectare land position, we took everything we could that had the potential to do this. And we're going to rationalize our land position. We're going to acquire some more. We're going to let go of some ground that we think fertility is better in the areas we're going to focus on, just being very disciplined. But for the most part, this is incredibly rare. And this is why we've attracted investors like Teck. We have shareholders such as Newmont and several others who've approached us from the major mining company world in the last few weeks since we put out our first drill results. We are barely scratching the surface on this project, and we're seeing more and more potential for big things. And if you look at the scale bar in the lower left here, 2 kilometers, just put that up around some of these targets, and that will give you a chance to understand it. Grade is king, and we are looking for grade. I think we've yet to see some of the best grade on this project, but we hope to see that here in the coming months as we move forward. Back to you, Steve.
Thanks, Ivan. And thanks, Tim. We'll move on to Keenan next. Given your previous role as VP of Metals Exploration at BHP, what specifically attracted you to Coppernico's Sombrero project? Through your lens, what makes the opportunity compelling enough for you to join the team as a director?
Great questions, Stephen. And I guess without wanting to be trite, it's already been said in this call. And all I can do is put that into my own words. So, look, I first came across the property in mid-2018. And at that point in time, as companies are always wanting to do, is look for improvements in the quality of their portfolio. And within BHP, I was very much on the hunt for how are we going to increase the quality of the portfolio that we have in South America. And so I made a trip up to the Sombrero project. I was immediately struck by the size and the scale of the opportunity available there. As I mentioned in my introduction, I had worked previously in Peru. In fact, I was working for Anglo American at the time, and I was charged by Anglo American to go and have a look at Las Bambas during the privatization from the state. So I had, deep understanding of what success looks like in this belt, what quality looks like in this belt. And for me, the parallels which we've seen already in this presentation, this fireside chat on the map, I've had the privilege of seeing in the field. Immediately struck by the size and the scale. And further, it's extremely rare in this day and age to see outcropping mineralization that's essentially untested by drilling. Yes, we've had a handful of holes that have been completed on Fierrazo. I want to point out that they're very shallow holes, and in period they weren't assayed for copper and gold, as Tim has already indicated. We've gone back and re-assayed them for copper and gold, and we can now see the fruits of that labour. And I want to also point out there's been some discussion in this fireside chat around the cover. The cover is thin. You saw on those sections and the results of the trenches that we're looking at, meters to maybe tens of meters of cover at tops. If we contrast that with philo, where you're looking at 500 to 1,000 meters, then one would say, well done, philo, because you're going to need those grade width intercepts. We have the fortunate status here of, we've got shallow opportunities and plenty of them. So when I think about it through the lens of what a large company might be looking for, what any company should be looking for, and how they compete on time, cost, or quality, or indeed a combination of all three. Time, Ivan's already mentioned, we're a decade into this journey, and so there's a lot of investment already being made. We're well down that path. Cost, as I've indicated, this is relatively cheap exploration. It's shallow. It's easy. We can drive a rig up there pretty much any day of the week, 365 days of the year. And the quality is the scalability, and it's going to be the grade. And as Ivan just mentioned, we had already indications of that's a compelling component on the technical side. But the second thing is the people of Coppernico. I met the team in 2018, and I had a number of discussions back and forth with Ivan with my BHP hat on in 2018 and 2019. I was immediately impressed by the quality and the track record, as well as Ivan's clarity of what's needed to be successful. So if you pair a great team and a great project, it's a pretty compelling story to be part of. And to that end, joining both as a director and as an investor for me didn't take too many neurons.
Great. You've visited the project, back in 2018. Since you've been a director, I think you've been there a couple times, and I think for quite long periods of time out on the ground, walking around mapping. And when I heard that, I was very impressed. So kudos to you. But could you share your insights into kind of what you typically focus on when you're going to these site visits? Like what are you looking for geologically? Are you looking at kind of the processes and how they're sampling and logging core, all those kind of things?
Well, first of all, thank you. That's very kind of you to say that. My primary focus when I go out onto the ground is to be a cheerleader for the team. We've got fantastic people under Tim's leadership. They certainly don't need me getting in their way or second guessing them. So actually, most of my work has been supporting the decision making, and it's been contributing to the wider portfolio. We've already heard today that Coppernico does have a dominant land position in the area, 100,000 hectares under tenement. What's important to us is how do we, as I've already mentioned, how do we improve the quality of the portfolio? So to mention that he's been sending geos out to look at these other areas, I'm one of the geos he sends out. And in that capacity, I've been spending time across the wider district. As with most exploration efforts, I can see when I go out there, I do see the right framework elements, but it rarely converts into an attractive proposition. That's the nature of the exploration game with loads of potential. So consequently, when I come back to home base, which is in and around the Sombrero district, I'm always excited when I come back because I'm reminded of the quality and the caliber of the opportunity that we have there. I've also had the chance, I guess, to listen to the team on the detailed results that they have been working on over the last 12 months or so. And here I look to emphasize how they view the data as objectively as possible. I pushed him a lot, as he will attest to, on do we have the right structural architecture in place? and how might that influence the distribution of the scale of mineralization that we see. Particularly, I think a focus for us and a learning for us has been we need to understand how the mineralizing event has focused. And by that I mean, we see a lot of mineralization, which is encouraging, but for us to get a part where we see consistency of size, consistency of grade, then that will be the key for our success moving forward. So pushing the team to think about those dimensions. And then finally, as a director, of course, I participate in community discussions. I had dinner with a number of community leaders, I think last month. But also, I have an accountability to the rest of the board members on how we're carrying out the work. What does good governance look like? Are we doing our environmental management protocols correctly, etc.? And I'm pleased to say that I have no concerns there. As I mentioned, it's a fantastic team and it's a fantastic project. I'm privileged to be a part of it.
Yeah, so I mean, you somewhat touched on it a little bit, but based on your experience advancing early stage projects from discovery and forward, what do you see as the critical next steps or milestones at Sombrero? What kind of key indicators or results should we be looking for?
I had touched on that, but I will repeat just for clarity. I think discovery to me can be described as a stepwise progression. The first question we have to ask and answer is there a mineral system present that has led to mineralization? We can tick that box. We know that's blatantly. The second question that we have to ask and answer ourselves is, does it have the size and scale potential? I think we're largely there. We can show clearly parallels with the robustness, the size, the optionality that we see in Las Bambas is present also at Sombrero. The third question we have to ask and answer is the quality there. And by quality, that converts into grade, as Ivan has already mentioned, grade is king. I have to say there, watch this space. And this has to be the focus for us over the coming months, and 6 to 12 months. Have we got a focused system? Do we get the grades that we want to see? Are they expected? There are plenty of indications that we already see on the ground that we've got 0.3, 0.4 up to 0.6 and 7. What we want to see is consistently north of 0.7 to 1% copper. So we need to then marry that with a volume that's sufficient to be an attractive proposition for mining. So those are the questions that we are asking and answering, emphasizing grade will be king, and our focus will be where is that grade concentrated? Is it focused in the system, and how do we locate it?
Thanks, Keenan. Just a reminder, if you have any questions, you can submit them in the Q&A section. So now let's move on to Ivan. So Ivan, you've successfully monetized previous exploration ventures, Caden, Keegan, with the initial 20 holes at Coppernico being encouraging, but not yet showing us, a big there isn't a discovery hole yet, I would say. Kind of how are you leveraging your past experiences, market insights to rebuild investor confidence and bring back value to Coppernico?
First part is I'm extremely strategic, not just with marketing, but with positioning the company corporately. It's really difficult to go out and wave the flag when you don't have the data leading the charge. So we had to be patient from the fall through the early part of this year until we got the data, 20 holes back, and had to give Tim, Keenan, and the rest of the technical team a chance to give us the green flag or not. I mean, we certainly wouldn't market ourselves until we knew what we were saying. The opportunity here is quite substantial, and the confidence is building. And we've kind of got that report card here in the past 2 months. Also, in the light of copper, since we financed last May at 50 cents a share and copper went from $5 spot to $3.90 in November, it's very difficult to go spend marketing dollars in a collapsing copper market when you're waiting for results. And then we entered the election in the first quarter where tariffs really took a big gasp out of the copper equity market. There was just a lot of volatility. That's all passed, and it's coincided with us starting to get a lot of information from the project that we need and the pipeline of information that's coming. So now we have a very rich catalyst 6 to 12 months ahead of us, not only from surface work and new targets that are coming online, but very key permit advancements that are going to be driving that catalyst train. And then the last part of that answer to that question is, having taken Keegan from 10 cents to $9 per share, $1 million to $1 billion market cap, or selling Caden at $3.60 per share in the middle of the bear market for gold, there's a special understanding of how to position the company and market and monetize exploration success. That now makes a lot more sense to us based on what the project's telling us, what the pipeline looks like, and the timing of the copper space. So I think we're perfectly aligned to get on the road and be much more active, not just with this fireside chat, but with several. So I plan to be on the road with Tim and sometimes Keenan and possibly Christian Rios as much as we possibly can be as we get ready for phase 2. And we start to show the world that the catalysts are going to come out of this project, which we have inclinations towards going to be quite positive, especially the drilling that's going to take place in the next phase.
Great. Talking about, positioning the company in the right place and putting the right investors in at the right time. You were able to secure Teck Resources as a 9.9% shareholder back in August last year, and you already have Newmont, as an existing big shareholder. And given your experience with negotiating with majors like this, what do you think's attracted them to Coppernico? And based on discussions, I don't know what how much you can say, but is anyone else kind of sniffing around, showing interest in the project or the surrounding area?
That investment with Teck was a very competitive process. They were one of 3 that were quite serious about that investment. That relationship is exceptional. We spoke with Newmont yesterday, and we gave them an update. And they did acquire Newcrest, so there's a very, very big appeal towards copper and gold assets, such as Sombrero presents. We've had a few other majors come out since we put out our drilling. I mean, the phone started ringing. Again, as you've said, as the results may seem underwhelming to the general market, they are technically very, very positive. The system's present, and now it's about chasing those sweet spots. So I'd say the corporate activity is increasing a lot, and this time it's doing it with a lot of knowledge, and that knowledge is a key factor. As we're all talking about today, we have a lot more confidence in the system, in the multiple targets that we have in the region because of the data that we're collecting off of it, not just from drilling, but from other target areas. So that's improving a lot. We are, again, a very strategic group. We have the insights of Keenan Jennings, formerly head of exploration from BHP. We also have Antonio Rivas, who was formerly also senior executive with BHP, and to bounce ideas off them and to think strategically and to showcase the company properly so that the majors can see the full upside potential of a lot of these targets is going to be a big part of our marketing strategy. But as far as that goes, very, very honored to have 2 great shareholders like that, as well as all of our other shareholders. The compliments we get on our social access and the way we handle our communities is something we cherish and we want to foster continuously. We have seen 2 other majors actively in the communities in the area, so the area is starting to heat up quite a bit. I like to think that we got most of the best targets we can because we were so aggressive early with that large land position, but there is some majors now coming into the area, and I think you're going to see a lot more news out of this trend in this area. And so from that perspective, we're in a phenomenal position corporately. Relationship's great, and the thumbs up we've gotten from our existing shareholders has been quite complimentary to the work and to the geology. What attracted them was the geology, and that's what should. In any companies I'm involved in, and I've recently been involved with some other strategic investments by majors. Majors like scale, they like the longevity and potential grade of a major discovery. The longevity here is multi-year discovery potential. And that doesn't pay you today until you drill it, but it will give you a chance for a great premium if you start to find the discovery, which can happen very quickly in a few drill holes.
Yeah, and I mean, also in terms of where it's located, this isn't in the side of a mountain. Like there isn't, it's kind of gentle rolling topography. I think there's a big power line running through the property, so there's some infrastructure advantages there as well.
That's a good point to make. The infrastructure is quite exceptional. I mean, you're been there, you're driving right onto the property, power lines overhead as you're drilling, water, towns nearby, but not looking at where you might find a deposit or discovery. And that's critical in terms of profitability. It makes it a very good environment. I think the key to this part of Peru has been the social behavior that we've done, the agricultural programs we've brought into the Andes. We're very proud that they're sustainable. We're getting farming in an area that's at relatively higher elevation, helping with nutritional aspects and working in conjunction, showing the community that we can coexist in a very profitable manner from both sides, not just from our exploring, but they can also profit from the nutritional benefits that we're bringing in. I think that's the key in any mining project, is to be able to create a positive impact with the environment where you're at. And in the case here, the fertility and the opportunity is so big. We spent a lot of money and a lot of time early to go out and make sure that was done right. And we're going to continue to foster that and expand on it. So when you take the combination of social, environmental respect, and infrastructure, you're checking all the right boxes. The only thing missing here now is that the first 3 or 4 major drill holes that we drill, in addition to the 8 holes already drilled at Fierrazo.
Yeah, I mean the social is so important. I know, this is minor, but from when I was at site, I know when we were having, breakfast and dinners, it was kind of at a different place each night. So I thought that was a cool way of kind of spreading around kind of the benefits that Coppernico at this stage could bring to the community, as well as employing people. And yeah, really good job on that front. Last question for you, Ivan. Looking forward 12 to 18 months, what specific milestones or results, catalysts can we expect from Coppernico, and how much capital do you anticipate needing to execute this plan? I know you said you had, I think, 12 months of at least of working capital, but if you can expand on that.
So catalysts are going to be, I mean, we're trying to put out more frequent press releases. Finally, there was a gap where we didn't have any news, and that's a nightmare for the share price performance, and it's tough for investors. We want to make sure that our news is efficient and it's very meaningful to the project. So you're going to see a string of announcements towards permits being filed, baseline studies being complete. They're all complete now. So we'll be announcing that we've filed a big permit that's critical. You will see advancements in neighboring communities. You will see additional channel sampling and trench results from additional targets. We are getting to finally channel sample Neok, which has been largely talked about. It's a lot of people's favorite target in addition to Fierrazo. And we can see on surface that the mineralization is extremely well pronounced. So very encouraging results. A lot of grooming of targets. Tim mentioned a few more targets coming out of Macha Machay. This is going to be a very target-rich company going into the fourth quarter. And we are going to be quite advanced with our permitting process. So we don't know when we're going to exactly drill. We'd love to drill in the fourth quarter, and we're going to do everything possible to do that. Our permitting team and our lobbying effects have been extremely well received. This is how we've gotten on the project online so far. But there'll be steady news flow, a drill program coming soon, and that drill program and what it will entail will be announced sometime in the fourth quarter. But from a marketing perspective, we will have a lot of news to talk about, a lot of educating to do to several institutions and retail and high net worth investors for the rest of this year going into that drill program. As you've seen the results of Fierrazo, and you can see the grades, and that's not even the best outcrop that I think is in the land position yet. And time will tell with pending results, but I think you can see the positive, potential probability of success there. And the real key to Ccascabamba, we drilled some stuff at Ahota. We call it smoke, but it's meaningful. And we think that the Fierrazo mineralization is going to really unlock the geology there and possibly give us a lot better context of some areas we've drilled already, in addition to the fact that we have other targets like Antapampa and Neok that do carry some of the same geological features. So it's going to be key. The first discovery is going to lead us in a lot other directions that are very positive. The time is something that new investors can look at today and say they've saved 10 years to get to a project or a company that has 5 or 6 world-class exploration opportunities. That's a big one. The knowledge that we've gained and the pace of the technical team, you've heard both from Tim and Keena today, and the depth of technical understanding and knowledge. That timeline is getting really exciting for me because we're getting a lot closer towards that success of figuring out some of these big targets. And so that's going to be a factor. And thirdly, as the trenches come out and as we showcase some of these new targets, we pull out the drill, as I said before, a couple holes to start demonstrating that the model's working in one of the targets. I think the investor is going to look at the pipeline of additional targets and be able to measure pretty aggressively with what this could really get into. And that talks about future financing needs. We have enough capital to drill Fierrazo as we sit today. It would take a quarter of working capital out of our 1 year of working capital that we're sitting on today to put in about 10 holes into Fierrazo. So we're in a great financial position, but I'm more excited about near-term catalysts, getting the permits online and building that stage so everyone can see where all of this confidence, enthusiasm is coming from before we get into the second round of drilling. We do have warrants at 30 cents per share that are extremely great investors that own them, that have been, cornerstone investors with getting to this point 10 years later. And we would look to get those exercised in the not far future as we move into possibly putting the company in a financial position to raise more capital, either in Q4 or Q1 of next year. We don't have a race or need to raise capital anytime soon. Right now, our focus is on getting a lot of news out that we see coming and re-rating the company considerably as we start to showcase the next round of drilling. So a lot of excitement ahead before the F word comes out, which is financing, near-term dilutables that could be exercised to cover plenty of drilling, and one of the most exciting copper exploration stories developing that I'm aware of globally right now.
That's fantastic. You've got me pumped up. And I also agree. I think that these are some of the best large-scale copper targets out there in the junior market right now. So if you're not paying attention, pay attention and go check out the website. So let's go on to the Q&A section. Maybe we can talk about the permits first. So your original drill permit allowed, I showed the polygon earlier. I think it allowed 49 holes from 38 pads. You're working on an expanded permit. How many holes would that allow for? And would that include areas like Tipicancha or Good Lucky or Neok, for example?
So the permit we're working on is going to include a much larger polygon that includes Tipicancha, the Fierrazo area as well. Chumpi, as Tim talked quite positively about, where we did not hit the contact. And that'll include about 200 holes, which is an extremely expansive permit. And it'll give us a lot of really good access to the low-hanging fruit, the obvious targets, as well as some ones that we're vectoring towards in our first program. Neok and Good Lucky are not included in this permit. And the next stage of Neok is the social access agreement that we're working towards. And then shortly after that, we're going to start a permitting process there. There are various ways to get permits in Peru and following the guidelines of which ways you can go. And so we're looking at ways to accelerate permits into areas such as Neok. Good Lucky will be in the pipeline. Macha Machay is actually in the permitted area in terms of social access with Ccascabamba. About 60 or 70% of the areas that we currently really like will be drillable at sometime here in the next 3 to 6 months is what our estimation is. That can take 8 months, just to be completely fair. I can't pin that specifically, but we're going to put out a lot of updates towards that. And there's plenty to drill at Tipicancha. There's plenty to drill around Ccascabamba. Fierrazo is going to be a very exciting drill program for us. As we're drilling those areas, we'll be advancing permits in Neok and towards Good Lucky and the other areas that we're identifying. So look forward to plenty to drill. And again, the scale is massive, and the amount of drilling we can do in these targets to really identify tonnage and potential grade is going to be extremely exciting for shareholders as we advance those permits in the background. A big factor for us is two things. One, we've been through the permitting process obviously recently. We have a very good handle on how to get through that quite efficiently. I'd like to think we've done it at a very good pace, and that's going to continue. The government is very familiar with our work, our style, as is the community of our presence, and that's all going to work in favor to help us with accelerated potential timelines for permitting. The more you're on a project like this, the more you get understood by everyone there. And I think the thing everyone's going to look forward to in the nearest term would be starting at Fierrazo with the drill bit and working through Chumpi and Tipicancha as we learn a lot more about Neok in the background and that advances.
Great. Tim, when we look at Fierrazo, you see that mineralization right on the contact between the Ferrobamba and the Mara formation. It looks like you have the same setup at Antapampa, but that contact seems to be pretty key. What are your thoughts on that? And at Tipicancha, that contact at depth, because what you're seeing right now in the kind of the lithocap environment, that's all in the younger volcanics on top of the Ferrobamba, the Mara formation. So is there potential for, skarn at depth there too?
Yeah. Let's see, we'll start with the Tipicancha and then move backwards. Yeah, these younger porphyry systems or epithermal porphyry systems that we're seeing in Machay or Tipicancha presumably are all cutting through that same set of stratigraphy, same sedimentary package. And so a porphyry system moving through those limestones has potential to put out a lot of skarn mineralization. And so at this time, we don't have a good sense of really how thick the volcanic cover is. We know it's quite variable and changes relatively quickly. I've seen outcrops of basement rock, and then 500 meters away, you have 150 meters of volcanics. It changes very quickly, but there's a lot of potential for a similar style of skarn mineralization, skarn porphyry systems below those volcanics. Absolutely. And as far as the contact between the Ferrobamba and the Mara limestone, there's, I was talking with Teck about this as well, because they're quite excited about that contact area. The Mara formation is known to have a lot of evaporites and salts in it, and deforms quite easily. It's also really fine-grained and can act as sort of an impermeable barrier to fluids. And so, we don't have a full sense of exactly what makes that zone the most favorable so far, but certainly rheologic contrast, lithologic contrast can be an important control on mineralization. Permeability contrast can be an important control on mineralization as well. And so we certainly want to be able to continue to test that. And we really only got one hole that crossed that contact in our first program. We see the crossing that contact in the historic drill holes at Fierrazo, and we'll be working to understand and trace that contact quite a bit more, see where else we can target it.
No, thanks, Tim. Ivan, I've seen you on some interviews recently. You've got majors reaching out to you. If I look at the share price of Coppernico, it's done quite well over the last week or so, few days. Any idea? You get some of these majors interested in buying the open market? What's going on?
I don't know. That's a new talent, and I mean, if you want to see it at the table, we don't need money right now, and that's a big factor. The stock price became irrationally cheap for the opportunity, like grossly cheap, and there wasn't much we could do about it for a little bit. You can buy a company for two reasons. One, the fundamentals have improved considerably, and the pipeline of catalysts is very rich. That's actually happening for us, as we've demonstrated here in the call today. The second one, it's grossly undervalued for the opportunity, and that's a massive flag right now, being grossly undervalued. So starting to do more interviews, starting to become more public about it. There was a heavy perception in the marketplace that this wasn't working, and it's the exact opposite. It's working very well. We're now talking to majors about the results. The reaction is extremely positive. The news flow is going to be very consistent, and finally get to go back on the road for the rest of the year quite extensively and share this with many investors. There's a question about is management buying and stuff. Not yet. We bought. Keenan and I were buying it in January and February. We have very large position in the company, a very large investment in the company. I do plan to buy more. I'm not price sensitive. I'm just time sensitive of when liquidity makes sense to own more. If I could double my position today, I would. That's how much I believe in the project and where it's going. And I look forward to buying quite a bit more throughout the rest of the year. But it's just the market's trying to recognize that this project is a lot better than they thought it was, and so are other majors. And the pipeline of news, we're getting active again, and we're going to spend some very, very important marketing dollars to make sure we can perform with the share price and match it to the enthusiasm of the project. Something we've done extremely well in our previous companies and throughout my career. So it's time now. It's the home stretch to the big holes that we're going to drill next, and to bring in on some really good targets in the pipeline.
Great. Is there anything that I didn't ask today that you think would be worthwhile speaking about, or you wanted to talk to?
I just want to thank you and thank Tim and Keenan for making the time today. I know they both have busy schedules, and the project's got a lot going on with it. I'd also like to thank the communities that have given us the permission to be there. That's something we appreciate a lot, and it's mutually beneficial, but it's really their backyard. And so it's something we're very, very appreciative of. The only other comment I have is we're exploring a major copper system in a rising copper market. I'm watching a lot of stuff come out about copper prices needing to double. Some of the largest mines in the world are near halfway done, and they're getting into deeper copper and deeper pits. This is probably the best storm you could possibly have pictured for copper prices to perform, and we're going to be drilling massive targets into that with the potential for a lot of grade and scale right from surface. And that's something that I just really want to emphasize. The well-funded nature of the company and the ability to access more capital is very strong, and it gives us a lot of excitement. So look forward to a lot more news, a lot more interviews about it, and seeing us personally on the road quite extensively through the rest of the year and as we get ready for the next phase of drill.
Okay, great. Keenan, Tim, Ivan, thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it. I think it was an interesting discussion. We'll be looking for future news releases and results.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Steve. Good to see you again.
Thanks, everybody.